Clarke, we're still talking about DWI stops, the stop itself. There are two things I want to ask you about. One is, what if you're stopped at a routine checkpoint? And the other is, what about drug checkpoints? Can you address both of those?
I certainly can, and I love your phrasing, routine checkpoint. There's no such thing as a routine checkpoint, but police use it every day in the courtroom. Routine doesn't mean a thing. A checkpoint's a checkpoint, and a checkpoint is an unconstitutional seizure. Now, there's a narrow exception. If the state jumps through all the right hoops, they can set up a DWI checking station. And that was decided by the U.S. Supreme Court back in 1989 in a case called Michigan versus Sitz. Now, in Michigan, they specifically set up a DWI checkpoint in which the people were detained for an average of 18 to 25 seconds. Minimal detention.
Everybody.
Everybody that drove down this one road.
Okay.
There was somebody answerable to the public out there, an elected official. They posted signs in advance, you're entering a DWI checkpoint.
That's fair.
And the U.S. Supreme Court, in a split decision, a 5-4 decision, so it could have gone either way, decided that the harm caused by the immediate vehicle-bound threat of a drunk driver was so great that they would allow this minimal intrusion. Now, the same doesn't apply to license checks. There's no immediate vehicle-bound threat of anybody if your license happens to be expired for 30 days or so.
Right.
And there's still the same amount of intrusion, if not greater intrusion, when you set up a license check, because then you're not restricted to 18 to 25 seconds of, have you got alcohol in your system? No, okay, you're free to go. Instead, they stop you and they walk around the car and they look for anything they can possibly find, and that is illegal. Now, I'm still fighting it. We're still waiting for the Court of Appeals to render a decision in Vesey, the case that I've taken up. So we're still waiting for an answer on that.
Right. Now, what about the other thing I mentioned, which was drug checkpoints?
Well, checkpoints started with Michigan versus Sitz back in 1989, and that was up in Michigan, and the U.S. Supreme Court said, we're going to approve DWI checkpoints. Well, the police didn't hear the DWI part of it. They feel like we've approved checkpoints. So during the 90s, police began setting up random checkpoints where they would go through and walk drug dogs around your car. And finally, it made it up to the U.S. Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, no, you cannot have drug checkpoints. There's no immediate vehicle-bound threat of a drug dealer. They are a threat to our community, but they're not a vehicle-bound threat. The mere fact that they use a vehicle to transport drugs doesn't make it a vehicle-bound threat. And so the U.S. Supreme Court has thrown out drug checkpoints. They've approved DWI checkpoints. They haven't spoken yet on license checks, but I think I'm going to win it.
Well, we hope so, and I appreciate that information, but there's something else I want to go into. We'll do in the next segment, and that is what happens on a DWI stop when a wreck is involved. Pretty complicated stuff, but we're going to make it simple to understand in the next segment.